An initiative of the Greater Des Moines Partnership formed in 2007, the Business Innovation Zone, the BIZ, exists to connect entrepreneurial needs with qualified resources and to provide guided professional and business direction. The BIZ helps entrepreneurs maximize their successes by helping them navigate resources, strengthen knowledge, improve skills, form strategic alliances, and secure proper capitalization. To find out more about the BIZ, visit www.bizci.org.
I'm very humbled to be here, especially in a large group of, I consider many of you my peers, know many of you personally, so thanks for coming. I want to give a disclaimer. Everything that comes out of my mouth should be filtered. Don't take one thing that I say and go implement it. It's probably a really, really bad idea. I have no context for your life, your business. This is just random stuff coming out of my mouth. So I think that's something actually that I've learned over the years is you have to filter. There's a lot of incoming information, and you have to filter it. You have to learn how do I take a piece of something that I learn here, a piece of something I hear here, and apply it to my own life. If you don't filter it, you're probably going to get a lot of trouble. I also think, one thing that I've always learned in life is there's no one set of rules. There's not one way to do things. And I've learned that a lot in working with the Dwala team. I work with now 30 really, really smart individuals. And it's amazing, there'll be one problem in front of us. And people come up with 15 different ways to solve that one problem. I think what I've learned is there's not one great way to solve a problem. I think the most important thing is picking a direction and going and acting on it. So many times we can get caught in our own headspace where we overthink things rather than doing. And it's amazing what you can actually learn by just going and trying something. What's the worst that's going to happen, right? You have to manage some risks, but calculated risks, it's okay to fail. Another thing that I've found, this is maybe something I have to remind myself of, and it's important as you're a part of a fast-growing team that you're able to check your ego at the door. It's almost something that I feel so passionate about that I want a big sign in our office about. So you might wonder, what does that mean, check your ego at the door? Does anybody have any thoughts? None? Brad?
Let your ideas speak for themselves and not, let the merit of ideas be based on the merit of ideas and not who said them.
I think that's a really good interpretation of it, absolutely. There's probably 10 more interpretations of it. I think that's one thing that I might, say, think about that, filter that to your own life. What does it mean, check your ego at the door? No great company is built on one person. It's built on a set of really great, talented people coming together, building something. And it's, as a leader, sometimes that's been something hard for me to check my ego at the door, right? I don't get credit for all the amazing things that our team does, right? And that's really important to be willing to give up that. For the success of the company, you have to be able to check your ego. Another thing that I've learned is people come to me with these great ideas, and I say, what's stopping you from going and doing it? And confidence is half the battle. And for some reason, people have a lack of confidence to just go out and try something. If you can get over your own lack of confidence, you're probably one step ahead. This is a little piece of advice I've actually taken from Ben, the founder of Dwala. If you don't know the answer, Google it. It's amazing what you can find online. I have to admit, I've Googled COO. What the hell is COO? I got this title. What the hell am I supposed to be doing? No one gives you a playbook for what it means to be the COO of a company. I Google it regularly, to be honest. I mentioned this earlier, but don't be afraid of failing. Try things, experiment. A lot of the best innovation comes out of people trying something, maybe failing the first time, learning something, and trying again. Iterate, just keep going. And the last little piece of random thoughts, as I call these, random thoughts from Charise, that I'm going to offer prior to opening up for questions is don't be afraid to lighten up. That's something I think it's constantly good to, take yourself serious, but chill out. Life is short. Like, have some fun. Lighten up. And, okay, I always have one more thing. As my team will say, Charise always has one more thing, one last thought. Kind of goes back to the thought that I had at the beginning is, there is no magic playbook. So with that, very short and sweet, I wanted to keep it, my random thoughts short so that we can open it up to you questions and answers. I know all your time is super valuable, and I could talk about a million different things. So,
well, I'm going to take the first question and we'll open it up to the room. So that was kind of an interesting question. What's your biggest challenge in the last 90 days?
it's tough to pinpoint one because every day in a startup, I mean, we probably face 10 new challenges a day. Maybe that in itself is the challenge. The amount of kind of incoming new ideas, new partnerships, new opportunities, and also the things that your team needs from you, your investors need from you. I think managing all the noise that starts to compile in a business is a really big challenge. That's a really good question. So Mark asked, what does a COO do? And my role at Dwala has evolved quite a bit. From one of the first team members to now we have 30. So I used to do a lot of doing myself. I used to do a lot of the hiring, a lot of the accounting, a lot of the financial projections, a lot of the investor relations, a lot of contracts, directly, managing and negotiating contracts, business development. My role has really evolved over the last 2 years into building up a team that really becomes great at all of those areas. And my role more now is making sure everyone's rowing the same direction, putting out fires. I think I'm now a chief firefighter.
How did you figure out when it was time to move up in terms of getting away from like the smaller details and moving up and being more of the overseeing and making sure that things are going the right way?
The question was, how do you decide when to move up and let go of some of the details? I think that's a constant struggle for me, to be honest. I like controlling things, and I like doing things. And as you become a leader of an organization, you have to let go of some things if you're actually going to have a bigger view of where's the ship heading. I think part of it is necessity. You get to a point where you're staying up and working 16 hours and you still can't keep ahead, and things start to cluster. Like, how can I now take a part of my job and hand it off to someone else? The key, though, is not to get too far buried that you can't even get ahead of it to pass it off. Does that make sense?
Are you still owning and operating your own businesses, or have you set those aside and has Dwala taken over that part of your life? And how did you make that transition?
Christian and I were actually talking about this. I am 100% Dwala, probably 500% Dwala. There's no time in a startup to be doing more than one, especially when it starts to get rocking and rolling. Some people might be able to do it depending on their startup, but not in a startup like Dwala. So I think the overachiever in me tried to do 3 things at once, and I just couldn't do it. You had to say no eventually.
Did you sell your business?
So the one I just put on hold, and the other one I'm partners with Mike, so Mike's taken on a little bit of the burden. Thanks, Mike.
Whose part was that?
Yes, in the back.
So I understand a little bit about Dwala and paying for things through your phone. Sort of help me understand the big picture. Where does Dwala fit in amongst these super huge, the Visas and the MasterCards and the PayPal? What is your sort of
Right.
strategy to
So the really big vision is that we actually become a new Visa of today. So if Visa was to start all over, how would they rebuild a network? So that's the real big vision. It's not really about the smartphone. It's not really about the web interface. It's how do you create a new rails to move money? That's short and sweet. Do you want more?
I have a technical question with Dwala. We're from Iowa City, and Dwala hasn't really taken hold there. One of the things that we've found as a hurdle is the verification period. How have you guys overcome that here? Because it's obviously caught on in Des Moines. Maybe it's because you guys are based here, and so people just want to be involved in it. And in a place like Iowa City, and as Dwala grows, how do you see overcoming that initial hurdle of getting people?
Right. Yeah, so you hit a couple of the problems that we're continuing to try to solve. And one is we're a system that moves money. So we require a lot of verification. We verify your phone number, email, date of birth, social security number. So it's a lot of information to verify. We have found that in trusted situations, we've taken off the most, where someone is using the platform for one specific reason. Also, a lot of our business right now is not coming really from the merchant businesses, although that's like prevalent, right? You can go see Dwala at Smoky Row or Dos Rios. Most of our business is more online transactions where we're replacing checks. So instead of sending 10,000 freelancers checks, they're using Dwala to do those payouts. Or instead of paying your church with a check every month, you can set up a recurring tithing using the Dwala system. But I think about the life stage of, you also have to say, like, where's our focus as a business right now? And although we definitely have the technology to support the merchants, I think that there's some brand recognition that has to happen and continue to evolve our name before some of those situations become a little more everyday. I also look at like Google. They've had a really hard time getting any traction with even the Google Wallet. So I think it's a change of behavior that's not going to happen overnight.
In Japan, all the financial transactions are done on a cell phone. And then they have an internet system, I think it's 150 times faster than ours, because the country's smaller. Is there any connection to that kind of technology emerging in the United States, or have you heard about?
Right, so our system is all based on internet connection. So Dwala is an internet-based payment network.
So it could use any.
It could use anything connected to the internet to make a payment. You bring up an interesting point. One of our team members said, we should take Dwala on Ragbri. And it's like, I grew up in a small town. Do you know what cell phone coverage is like and internet coverage is like? Right? It's probably not a good idea quite yet. Because of...
You can't use it in a small town.
Well, you can, but it relies on internet speed, right? And if you're using a mobile phone, it relies on good signal. So that's just like one of the hurdles. I think that technology in the U.S. has to continue to evolve.
Charise, I'd like to take a question real quick. I think it's really good. How do you ensure everyone in the company is living the company culture consistently when you have multiple generations, backgrounds, educations, etc.?
So culture is a funny word that I didn't know I'd have to really know about 7 months ago. Right? We were a small team. We'd all been there sort of since the beginning or over a period of fast growth. And then all of a sudden we went from 10 to 30 team members. And about 7 months ago we realized we have to start thinking about culture, right? Why is that person not acting like this? Why would they think like that? Although we want diversity of thinking, right? It's sort of like the anti-Dwala way, like why are they afraid to try something? And we realized that we had to work on a culture of like a common vision, common mission, and common values. So we now have monthly fireside chats that Ben does with the team, and we have a values book that sits all around the office. mission and values are getting printed and put on our wall. I think that that's part of it. And then I think also it's, action speaks louder than any words. So if you want a team to all grow in one way, you have to kind of think as a leader and as like key team members, am I acting out that vision? Am I acting out that value? Because you can't put a bunch of shit on the wall and then go do something else. Sorry, probably shouldn't swear.
You talk about it's an alternative to writing checks. One of the greatest amount of checks I write is government, and I didn't see the whole piece with wallet and the government. Tell us how that's being your face. That I have to write a check for my car license and my taxes. And
Right.
it'd be a wonderful thing if I could just do that.
We actually have a lot of upcoming exciting announcements with counties, cities, and state governments. The one with the state of Iowa was our first announcement, and we announced it in a beta test, so it's for one specific use case. But we wanted to get that one up rolling, and then we're going to continue to work with the state at different agency levels to roll out Dwala as an alternative option.
That's about the only reason I write a check.
It seems like your area is one that's pretty heavily regulated, both at state and federal levels. Was that a bigger barrier at the initial startup stages, or at the funding and capital growth stages, or kind of how did you deal with that aspect of it?
Right. That's a really good question. And Ben spent about 2 years pre-ever launching the company working on the regulation. And we found really good partners. We also found really good legal advisors. So we spend a lot of money on legal advice when it comes to regulation. And I don't think it's anything, I thought maybe we just picked a really heavily regulated space. But then I started talking to peers that have startups in New York and San Francisco, and even something like Airbnb, you wouldn't think is heavily regulated, but they have regulators coming after them for different things. So I think it's the nature of a startup. Everyone sort of wants to protect consumers, which is really, really important. And so you're going to get a lot of inquiries, and you have to have the team and the partners and probably the legal team to continue to address like the ongoing regulatory changes. It's a big part of our business.
You talked about investor relations as part of your job. How do you think what you communicate to investors, how frequently, and what that tone is, how honest you get, how much detail?
Honesty is definitely important. We found there's not time to like sugarcoat things. You have to put a little bit of a wrapper on it, right? But you have to be honest and transparent at all times with your investors. Your investors are there to help you. If you don't give them the full story, they can't really help you, right? So that's kind of our number one rule is honesty at all times. I would also say over communication. So Ben and I have very regular communication with our investors. And again, it might be dependent on what type of investors you have. We've liked to think that we've taken a lot of time in choosing the right investors. So we see them as part of the team, not someone that we just take our money from and say like, don't bother us. Some people might find once they get into it that they get the wrong investors. You probably are going to have to treat those a little bit differently. Does that answer your question?
You mentioned that part of your job is getting everybody to row in the same direction. Can you talk a little bit about how you do that and like what sorts of tools you use? Because I know even with 7 people in the same room, it's hard to do that.
Yep.
I can only imagine with many different offices and quickly growing teams. What's like.
Yeah, I had originally started like maybe making a presentation about just that one topic. There were a couple things that we've done. One, I think, is transparency. And in order to have transparency with the team, you have to trust your team. You have to be willing to put it all out there. And that was something that was a little uncomfortable for me for a little while. Like, how much do we share with the team and how much do you hold back? I think we found 99% of the time it's better to be open and honest. So one, starting like creating that transparent environment. Second is sharing the metrics that drive the success of your company. So we have 4 metrics that everyone knows. Like, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is what we have to achieve this month. This is what we have to achieve this year. And numbers and communicating those numbers and displaying those numbers and letting those numbers drive the company go a long ways of when people decide like, hey, should I do this? Well, does it help this, 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 or this? Nope. Well, how do you make an argument for, I want to go do this? Does that make sense? We've also done a couple things. We have a daily stand-up. We used to have one daily stand-up with our entire team. We've now split it off because 30 people all talking about their priorities is not a good use of time. But the daily stand-up forces daily communication. And in that stand-up, we say, what are your priorities? What are your roadblocks? And share something fun. Like, we like to laugh at those as well. Does that help?
How do you deal with communication between all the different groups in different locations?
I don't know if we quite have it figured out. I was thinking about this the other day. There's a lot of emails that are going around, and in one sense you can say, yay, that's great, people are communicating, but the inefficiencies of email sometimes makes me want to pull my hair out, to be honest. So a couple tools that I think have worked are that stand-up. Also, we have everyone is always available on chat and G+. There's always a lot of communication. We don't have a lot of rules about when you have to show up or when you work, but there has to be kind of like a baseline. I'm available. And then also as like new team members come in, introducing them to kind of who does what, so that they can kind of reach out and like say, oh, like I can reach out to Brandon because he'll be able to help me with that design problem. Creating kind of like the communication loop, like who should talk to who to help build something. Does that help?
Charise, I've got a question for you. What was the most frustrating challenge to overcome during a startup? The most enlightening experience you ever had? You can pick whichever startup you want to talk about.
Oh, wow. It's a tough one. Biggest challenge.
Most frustrating challenge to overcome during a startup.
I think it's maybe self-limitation. That maybe sounds goofy, but I want to be able to do more, but there's only so many hours in the day. I want to know more, but there's only so much you can actually learn in like a small amount of time. So I think it's like self-limitation, and then it's also team limitation. We're going through this right now where we have all these great opportunities, but we only have like a 30-person team. Like, you can only get so much done with 30 people. And so it's like, I want to do this, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and they're all awesome, but you just can't do them all. That's frustrating. Ben's question was, as you bring more people on, how do you maintain a cohesive brand? So yeah, I think that there's two parts of that. One, internally, we've really had to focus on establishing the vision, the mission, and the values, and helping kind of teach that to everyone that comes into the organization is how we kind of keep our internal brand. Those internal vision, mission, and values also, though, play into our external brand, right? So they're not mutually exclusive. And you have to trust like the design team and the marketing team and the communications team to really gel so that as a team, they're continually expressing who you are to the world. And you just have to trust them to do their jobs. Hiring. Hardest part about hiring is, I think sometimes we wait too long, right? Because as a startup, you have a really tight budget. So you don't want to overspend too fast on that position you think you might need in 60 days. But it probably takes 60 days to get that right fit. So one is, when you're trying to hire someone fast, how do you meet a big enough candidate pool to actually get the right hire? I think the other times is we've met people that it's been like right person, wrong time. So I think that's the chat. Like, challenging in hiring. And then the other thing is finding someone that will mesh well with our culture. We're like an all-in culture. We're a big family. We do a lot together. Even at 30 team members, we do a lot of things in the office and out of the office together. So we're constantly, you can't be a jerk. Like if you're a jerk, like you can't work at Dwella. Like we all work in like 1,000 square feet. I mean, you got to get along. So, but you don't always know that about someone, right? They can be really nice the first time you meet them. That's why it's important for people to meet multiple different hires. And the other thing is, if they're not a fit, like you got to get rid of them. Like that stuff will like pull your organization down. Go for it.
How would you define
The
the Dwella brand?
Dwella brand? The ideal way to pay anyone. The ideal way to pay anyone.
Why would that be?
That's what we're working on.
How do you continue to lead and motivate your team to always aspire to create ideas and move kind of ship?
Yeah, I think communication and data has been a big part of inspiring the team. Of like, if everyone knows what they're working towards, there's inspiration, and there's also clear transparency when we actually achieve something. Right? It's not like, rah, rah, we got a newspaper article. Like, that's not really a measure of our success. It's, hey, we hit our 3 big numbers that are going to take us to the next level. So I think that data has gone a long ways. We also have a kind of an attitude of celebrating wins in the office. So in our stand-ups, people share like, hey, I've been working on this thing. It's like a big win that it got accomplished. So we celebrate as a team. There's a lot of clapping, goofy stuff like that. Pats on the back.
I really see Dwella as being a champion of startups here in Des Moines, arguably the Midwest in general. I'm curious about your vision for Des Moines and what steps, if any, Dwella is taking to help elevate the waters for all the startups here.
It's a really good question. We really look at startups as where there's like there's success, there's more success. So I think there's like a momentum that's been built in the community that I think we're definitely part of it, but we're not the only one. I mean, there's so many great startups. I look around the room, like so many of you have great startups. It's not just about Dwella, it's about a community of startups, and it's how that community helps each other. I also think it's about how that community shares mind share, right? Like, what did you There's always phases that you're going through in a startup, and having other people that you can turn to that have been through it before, maybe 6 months ahead of you or 12 months ahead of you, is really important, because although there's no ideal playbook or there's not anything ideal that Brad can tell you or I can tell you, being able to learn from someone and apply it to your own startup, I think builds momentum. Yep.
But then the online business is strong too. What's the next big vision for the marketing push?
I'm trying to think. They're like daily pushes, so I'm like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we're always like constantly iterating and trying. So the latest thing is we've been rolling out a lot of very specific landing pages, and then we're going to be kind of coming back and building more marketing around them. So we rolled out like landlords and renters and CSAs, community farm groups, our big user of Dwella. Continuing, I think we have now a religious one, schools. So there's not one. We don't think one vertical is going to make Dwella a winner. It's building out this holistic network. So we're constantly pushing all of them. Tej?
What would Coach Charise Seaman's counsel to firefighter today?
I need what I used to do. So my old business was C Results, and I used to come in and consult entrepreneurs on setting priorities and kind of setting accountability. And I think the biggest thing that maybe that I need now is sitting on the COO side is enough time to be thoughtful and not just reactive. You know, you can be busy all day long, but if you don't take the time to really map out, what do I have to get done this week? What do I have to get done next week? And look back at that, you might just waste like a month where you're just really, really busy. I think that's what I need most right now. Keep reminding myself of the importance of that practice.
So you said that you have something about culture, cultural segments, hindsight being 2020. When would have that sign? Let's start there.
Well, it's funny. Before, I remember when I was still a consultant with Ben, he was getting ready to hire team members, and I was like, we need to have a vision, and there's got to be values, so we actually had a lot of it written out from 2 years prior, but it wasn't like a living, breathing thing. And a couple people had seen it in like their welcome package, but we didn't make it like a part of, hey, you're now a new team member, here's the vision, here's the mission. So I would say like it was about the right time to like bring it back up. But I don't think it's a bad practice to try to like live earlier and make it more intentional earlier.
Have you and Ben found it challenging to carve out rules? Did that Google search help? This is it.
You know, I think Ben and I work really, really well together, and I think part of that is I had a year working with him in kind of a consulting nature. So I think we know each other's strengths and weaknesses really well. We complement each other really well, and it's a partnership. It's a give and take of, hey, can you take this today? Because I can't, I don't have the mental energy to kind of solve that problem. Or we have started to carve out, you know, who more directly reports to you and who more reports to you, and we want to be a flat organization, so that's a whole other conversation. And it's all an evolution, but I would say fundamental to us successfully working together is trusting each other and truly looking at it as a partnership.
We'll have that conversation. Can they stay flat and grow exponentially?
It's tough. We don't have it figured out. We have a circular organizational chart because we think that it's a little more modern and a little more less hierarchy. And there's, you know, then you have internal debates internally with people that are used to a different structure and versus a new structure. It's like one of the fun things that you got to figure out as you go along. At some point, though, I think your capacity can only go so far. And you need to start to seek out who's stepping up as leaders in the organization, and I think that happens naturally, and it doesn't have to be forced. Not like we're now going to have hierarchy and you're going to report to that person. I don't think that's probably a good idea in a startup.
Do you guys have somebody on your staff that is, my question is around marketing. I mean, it's great, you have this great product and it's going to change the way we do business and like Jackson, but it's not, you have to get it out there, like you have to know how
Yep.
to use it, right? So do you have somebody in-house that you use for marketing, or are you relying, is there somebody that you're relying on? Is there anybody out there in in our community that kind of owns that space? Or
Yeah, I mean, there's.
These are, and also is social media to me seems like a big ocean, and I mean, is social media as effective and as necessary as people in terms of getting your message out there?
Right.
Like that.
So I think you had 3 questions. 1, do we handle our marketing ourselves? Is there someone in the community? And 3, how we handle social media. We handle all of our marketing and product and communications and PR internally. There are wonderful people in the community that you can outsource to. We've always found it, well, actually, our PR guy Jordan, was a consultant at one time. So it depends on like where your organization is. Does it make sense to bring it in-house, or can you utilize consultants? In the early stage of Dwala, we used a lot of kind of outside consultants. Now we've pulled all of that in-house. It's definitely a challenge, though, getting our name out there without spending a ton of money. And we're a startup, and we have very low margins. So most of our marketing and growth comes through viral experiments, social media, word of mouth. We also get a lot through business development, through PR. So PR is actually a good growth tool for us. Social media is like, I think Mike's had whole sessions just on social media. I think it's really important to figure out what you're trying to accomplish in social media, and social media is not that straightforward. Just because you say I want new customers on social media, like that's really not what social media is about. It's about a conversation and building a community and some of the other ancillary effects that come from it. But it takes a ton of time. I mean, we have almost 2.5 people focused on our social media and blog. We're a private company.
Would you say your objective in build out the value of the company is to grow profits, grow revenues, or grow user base? What builds your value best?
It all has to grow in tandem, some having more weight than others. So I look at like this series of levers, right? So we've been working on our 3-year projections, and there's in our industry, there's a real big emphasis put on the number of users you have. A network, we're growing a network. So for a network to be successful, it has to have more users. You have to also keep in check the active users and then how much they're using the platform. And the goal is, with the more users, the more activity, therefore the more revenue. But it's also our model is somewhat like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest. Our focus right now is not all about revenue. It's about building the network.
Something about your business, how would you differentiate what you're doing in terms of building this network? Are you faster? Are you cheaper? Are you more secure? What is it that
You just hit our 3 talking points: faster, cheaper, secure. Yeah, all of the above. So faster, there's a couple things that we're doing to make payments faster. Right now, we're competing with checks because checks aren't fast. There are new products that we're bringing online that will improve the speed. So we use ACH, and without going into a bunch of detail, ACH is slow. It takes 2 to 3 business days. We're trying to fix that problem. And the long-term vision is to fix the problem of ACH by being a replacement to ACH. So that's the faster. The cheaper, we're 25 cents. It's one of the cheapest payment options out there, and secure. So when it comes to security, credit cards, checks, you leave behind all your information. We build a system that you don't leave behind that information, which inherently, just from the basics of how it was built, make it more secure.
Is there something about your technology or the way you're doing this that would prohibit Visa or MasterCard or somebody to come in and just say, yeah, we like what Dwala's doing, we're going to do that, crushing it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is they have so many layers in their value chain, right? So in the life cycle of Visa payment from start to finish, you have ISOs, you have resellers, you have merchant acquirers, you have banks, you have this whole line of people. They'd have to distribute that entire network to get as cheap as us, right? Their fee is now dependent on all the people that they depend on to distribute their payment type. So could it be done? Maybe, but it'd be like cannibalizing what they already built and all the relationships that they've built.
I had a question about equity in a startup. Do you feel like it is something that you establish early on, or if it's something that's constantly changing about employees feeling like they deserve a certain level of equity, or how you deal with rewarding through equity as opposed to just salaries or bonuses?
Yep.
How do you
I think that there's maybe a time in the life cycle of the company where it makes more sense than others. We're currently at a point where everyone has stock options, and that's really important as we grew, that everyone was vested in the success of the company. We might not be able to pay out sexy bonuses and big pay increases, so the stock option is really important to our team. It might not be for your business model. I think it's very dependent on what you're trying to build.
One of the things that we talk about a lot at our startup is we don't know yet what we don't know. I'm interested in looking back. What was kind of one of those big things that you learned later that would have really changed the way you would have done things as a startup?
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. I think we've become more of a data-driven company, and I wish we would have put more focus on that earlier, because it's created a lot of clarity. And that was maybe something we sort of knew, but it was like, yeah, we're busy, we don't have a ton of customers, like, who even has time to look at the data? But it's important. I think we could have had some better insights earlier, so it's probably like the biggest one that comes to the top of mind.
First of all, Ben just said Google on Twitter. Just fine looking up. I mean, obviously at 25 cents, you guys are the best value for transactions, but it's about to get even better with the fact that credit cards, merchants can now pass those fees on to customers. Is this something you guys see yourself moving on, kind of attacking that, or are you afraid to?
Have you been to a merchant yet that's passed a fee to you? I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah. It was interesting that it was passed on.
Yeah, I think I don't think it'll happen. Partly, I've talked to a couple merchants, and they're like, this merchant over here, who's my competitor, just put a PR statement out saying they're not going to do it. Like, how am I going to now do it? So I don't think consumers actually will end up paying for it. We've been trying to build more. What are our goals around social media? And the metrics are somewhat hard because you can look at one company and they have like 1 million followers, and you have another company and they have 10,000. But the 10,000 over here are more active than the 1 million over here, and I don't think we know yet. It's important to be paying attention and learning how it applies. There's not secret sauce yet. Lynn? Is this off the record? No. Joking. Turning a no to a yes? Yeah, we get lots of no's. I think sometimes you have to decide, do you really want it to be a yes? Like sometimes getting a no is better than a maybe. So I value the no. And you have to decide how bad you want it. And if you really want a yes, like re-trigger your strategy and go back after it.
What data early on do you wish you would have focused more on? You had mentioned a couple of questions ago. Like what should I be looking for in data that I shouldn't miss this early on?
Well, I think it's really important to say, so there's so many things you can measure. There's so many things you can look at. It's really important you take a step back and say, for my business, what are the 4 or 5 things that are important to my business? And am I looking at those, and am I measuring them, and do I understand them? And do I even have access to that data? Does that make sense?
It does, like specifically in payments.
Right, so I mean, ours are big ones: users, number of transactions, active users. Those are a couple of our big ones. Mark?
Talk more about how you can check your egos or door. My experience is the most creative, talented, driven people can be kind of hard-headed, and I think that
actually haven't found it that difficult because we have a very vocal team. So if you get a little out of your line, I don't have to say something. The guy sitting next to you probably will say it to you first. And I think that's important. Like that's, and I don't know how exactly how do you look for those people that keep each other in check, but it's someone that we've gotten lucky. The team keeps each other in check, and I think it's also we've tried to foster a team that it's we're all A+ players. There's no room for one rock star in this team. Like we're building something too complex to have one rock star.
So what does check your ego in the door mean to you?
It means a lot of things. It means I put my team first. Like that's the biggest thing, and I have to be okay that the conversation I had with someone that maybe like brought and encouraged them to bring an idea up. When they get praised by everyone, I sit there and I clap for them, not saying like, "Oh, I told you to do that." Like that was really my idea, right? Like I think that's sometimes hard to do. Like you have to put a smile on and praise everyone. And really, really, like in your heart, like be really happy for them and be happy for your team's success. And it's really important to remind yourself of.
Well, Charise, we're coming to the end of the hour. I want to ask the last question. Thank you, obviously, for coming. The last question, what is the most effective marketing tip that you would have for a young startup business?
I kind of suck at marketing, so. Don't spend a lot of money. Like, don't spend a lot of money in marketing. We don't spend a lot of money. We've been able to grow a national platform. We kind of have $1 per user. Like, if we can get a new user for $1, it's a good spend. If it's more than that, we better really justify the spend.